I found out my husband might be my half-brother because our parents hid an affair for decades. So I gave them one choice, tell the truth themselves, or I would do it for them. My name is Hazel Sinclair. I'm 35. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I work as a public health data analyst for the state. My job is literally interpreting percentages and risk models. I trust numbers more than I trust people, which is probably why this hit the way it did. Elias Brooks, my husband of 9 years, is 37 and a cybersecurity architect. He builds systems meant to prevent breaches. Ironically, neither of us saw this one coming. It started with a DNA kit. Christmas gift. Lighthearted. We were drinking wine in our townhouse, joking about ancestry percentages. He said he'd probably be aggressively English. I said I just wanted to confirm the Irish rumor my mom repeats every St. Patrick's Day. 3 weeks later, I logged into the results during my lunch break. Ethnicity breakdown. Fine. Health markers. Fine. Then, close family match. 24.9% shared DNA. I clicked before my brain caught up. Name. Elias Brooks. I actually smiled at first. Same last name? No. That's weird. Glitch. Then I Googled. 25% DNA means half-sibling. Aunt. Uncle. Niece. Nephew. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped wire around it. I closed the browser. Reopened it. Same number. 24.9%. Not 3%. Not 8%. 24.9. I didn't call him immediately. I drove home. I needed to see his face. He was at the kitchen island, laptop open, halfway through some security architecture diagram. I put my phone in front of him without speaking. He stared at it for a long time. He didn't laugh. He didn't say it was impossible. He just went still. And then he said, we need to call them. Them. Not this is wrong. Not DNA companies make mistakes. Them. That was the moment something inside me shifted. We drove 2 hours to Asheville that night. My parents, Roman and Marigold Sinclair, were already at the house. Elias's parents, Aria and Weston Brooks, had driven up from Savannah and were waiting in the living room. For parents. One couch. No one surprised to see us. I didn't sit down. I stood in front of them and said, explain. Silence. My mother started crying almost immediately. Not confused crying. Not shocked crying. Guilty crying. Aria Brooks wouldn't look at me. Finally, my father spoke. It was a long time ago. I felt cold all over. Roman Sinclair and Aria Brooks had an affair 37 years ago. It overlapped with both marriages. It ended before either family moved states. No one outside the four of them knew. When Aria got pregnant with Elias, the timeline was unclear. They never did a paternity test. They agreed it was better to assume Weston was the father and move on. I asked one question. When Elias and I started dating at Indiana State, did you know this was possible? No one answered right away. That was the answer. My mother finally said, we thought the odds were low. The odds. I deal with odds for a living. 24.9% is not low. They had talked about it. When Elias and I got serious. When we got engaged. When we set a wedding date in Raleigh. They discussed it privately and decided not to say anything. Because it might not be true. Because it would destroy 2 families. Because if we never found out, no one would be hurt. I asked my father if he had ever considered that we might have children. He said, we figured if that conversation came up, we'd deal with it. We'd deal with it. After a wedding. After a mortgage. After a decade of marriage. Elias didn't say much. He looked like someone who had just discovered his identity was built on sand. Weston Brooks stared at the carpet like he already knew. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I told them, very clearly, you gambled with my life. Then I told them something else. If you ever try to minimize this or pressure us to keep it quiet, I won't protect you. My father's head snapped up. Hazel, don't be dramatic. Dramatic. I pulled up screenshots of the DNA match. I had already saved them. Forwarded them to a private cloud folder. I'm not carrying your secret, I said. You had decades to deal with this. You chose not to. Aria whispered, what are you going to do? I looked at her and said, that depends on you. We left without hugging anyone. The drive back to Raleigh was silent except for highway noise. At one point, Elias said, we don't even know for sure. I said, 24.9% is sure enough. We haven't done a formal paternity test yet. Maybe because confirmation feels redundant. Maybe because once it's legally documented, there's no pretending. We're still living in the same house. Still married. But everything feels altered. When he brushes against my arm, there's a split-second glitch in my brain. Then I hate myself for it. Then I hate them. The worst part isn't the DNA. It's that they watched us exchange vows. They toasted us. They smiled in photos. All while knowing there was a very real possibility we shared a father. Last week, my dad called and said, we need to handle this quietly. That word. Quietly. That's when I made my decision. I told him he has until Thanksgiving. Either the 4 of them tell the extended family the truth fully, publicly, no spin. Or I will. And I won't be gentle. He accused me of trying to ruin everyone. I told him, you already did that. Elias doesn't want exposure. He wants distance. Therapy. Silence. I understand that. But I also understand something else. They took my choice away once. They don't get to do it again. Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks. And I've already drafted the message. They just don't know how detailed it is yet. The house felt different after Asheville. Not hostile. Not cold. Just unstable. Like a structure that looked fine from the outside, but had foundation cracks running underneath. Elias went back to work the next Monday like nothing had happened. Research Triangle Park. Security briefings. Firewall architecture. He slipped back into routine the way some people slip into denial. I couldn't. I work with disease modeling and probability forecasting. You can't unsee risk once it's quantified. 24.9% doesn't fade. The first week, we barely talked about it. We moved around each other carefully. Shared meals. Shared a bed. Didn't touch much. Then his mother called. I was in the kitchen when I heard him say, "Mom, stop." His voice wasn't angry. It was strained. I walked in as he put her on speaker. Aria Brooks sounded composed. Too composed. "We've spoken to your father," she said. "We think the best thing is to let this settle. There's no reason to involve the entire family." I stepped closer to the phone. "There is if you're trying to pretend this didn't happen." She went quiet when she heard me. Then she shifted tone. "Hazel, honey, no one is pretending. But public humiliation doesn't fix anything. Humiliation. Not accountability." I said, "You let us get married knowing this was possible." She replied, "Possible doesn't mean certain." That word again. Possible. I hung up before Elias could smooth it over. That night he said, "They're scared." I said, "Good." He rubbed his face like he hadn't slept. "Hazel, if you send that message, this doesn't just hit them. It hits Weston. It hits your mom. It hits cousins, grandparents. They should have thought about that before. That's not fair." I stared at him. "What part of this is fair?" He didn't answer. We started seeing a therapist in Raleigh, Ren Emerson. Mental health counselor. Soft voice. Neutral office. Beige couch that felt designed to absorb other people's disasters. In our first session, she asked, "What are you hoping for?" Elias said, "Clarity." I said, "Control." Ren nodded like those were compatible. They're not. In the second session, she asked if we'd done a formal paternity test. No, we haven't. Elias says there's still a chance. I say the math already did the test. Ren asked, "Are you staying together because you want to, or because you don't want your parents' mistake to dictate your future?" That question lingered. Because if I'm honest, part of me refuses to let Roman Sinclair and Aria Brooks decide whether my marriage survives. If we separate, it will be because we choose to, not because they forced our hand. 2 weeks after the confrontation, my dad showed up unannounced. He drove from Asheville to Raleigh and knocked on our door like nothing had shattered. I didn't invite him in. We stood on the porch. He said, "You're overreacting." I almost laughed. Overreacting? You're threatening to destroy relationships that have existed for decades. You destroyed mine. He winced at that. Then he tried a different angle. If this becomes public, people will look at you differently too. There it was. Shame by association. I said, "I'm not the one who cheated." He lowered his voice. "You think your coworkers won't whisper? You think Elias's firm won't find it complicated?" That hit because it was strategic. Elias works in cybersecurity. Reputation matters. Perception matters. My dad knows that. I stepped closer and said quietly, "Are you threatening my husband's career right now?" He backpedaled fast. "Of course not. I'm saying think about the collateral damage." Collateral damage. That phrase stayed with me long after he drove away. That night Elias and I fought for the first time. Not yelling. Worse. Controlled. He said, "If you send that message, it could affect my job." I said, "So their comfort matters more than the truth?" "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying?" He hesitated. And that hesitation hurt more than anything his parents had said. "I'm saying," he finally admitted, "I don't want my identity turned into gossip." That stopped me. Because this isn't just my humiliation. It's his too. He's the one whose paternity is in question. The one who might find out the man who raised him isn't biologically related. I asked him, "Do you want to know for sure?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I don't know." That scared me more than the DNA result. Because I do know. I want certainty. Even if it's ugly. A few days later, I had coffee with my best friend Juniper in Charleston. I needed someone outside the blast radius. I told her everything. She didn't gasp. Didn't judge. Just listened. Then she said, "You're not wrong for being angry. But ask yourself, what's the goal? Punishment? Or protection?" That question hasn't left me. If I blast the truth to every relative before Thanksgiving dinner, what happens? Yes, Roman Sinclair's image collapses. Yes, Aria Brooks has to answer questions she avoided for 37 years. But does that fix anything for me? Or does it just spread the damage wider? Meanwhile, something else happened. Weston Brooks, the man who raised Elias, called him privately. They talked for almost an hour behind closed doors. When Elias came out, his eyes were red. I asked what Weston said. He told me Weston has known for years. Not suspected. Known. Arya confessed during an argument 20 years ago. Weston chose to stay. Chose to raise Elias as his son. Chose silence. That shifted something inside me. Because now this isn't just two selfish parents. It's four adults who made calculated decisions. And every single one of them decided secrecy was easier than honesty. Thanksgiving is 10 days away. My father keeps texting, let's discuss this calmly. Arya sent a message that said, family doesn't need to know everything. I haven't responded. The draft message to the extended family is still saved on my laptop. It's detailed. Dates. Percentages. Admissions in writing. But yesterday, something happened I didn't expect. Elias scheduled the paternity test. Without telling me first. The appointment confirmation came to our shared email. I stared at it for a long time. He walked into the room and said quietly, if we're going to blow this up, I need to know exactly what we're blowing up. The test is scheduled for next week. 3 days before Thanksgiving. If the result confirms it, everything changes. If it doesn't, everything still changes. And now I don't know which outcome I'm more afraid of. The paternity test was done in a quiet medical office in Raleigh on a gray Tuesday morning. No drama. No shouting. Just paperwork and a technician who had no idea she was holding the last stable thread of our marriage. Elias gave his sample. My dad drove in from Asheville and gave his. No one looked at each other. The results were expedited. 48 hours. We spent those 2 days moving around the house like strangers renting the same space. Polite. Distant. Hyper-aware. I kept thinking about Thanksgiving in Savannah. About long dining tables and sweet potato casserole and forced smiles. About my draft email sitting in my laptop folder labeled, in case. Wednesday night, the results came in. Elias opened them. I watched his face instead of the screen. His jaw tightened first. Then his shoulders dropped. He turned the laptop toward me. Probability of paternity, 99.8%. Roman Sinclair is his biological father. Which makes Elias Brooks my half-brother. There it was. Not 24.9%. Not probable. Confirmed. The air felt heavy. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just final. Elias closed the laptop and said, okay. Just that. Okay. I waited for anger. Tears. Something loud. Instead he said, Weston's known since 2003. He told me tonight. I blinked. What? He confronted my mom years ago. She admitted it. He chose to stay. So Weston Brooks, construction safety manager, steady, practical Weston, raised a child he knew might not be his. And never told him. Elias sat down slowly and said, my whole identity is paperwork. That was the first time his voice cracked. I went to sit beside him out of instinct, then hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than the result. We didn't sleep much. Thursday morning, I called my father. He answered on the first ring like he'd been waiting. It's confirmed, I said. Silence. Then he exhaled. Hazel. No. You don't get to start with my name like that. He tried the same tone he used when I was a teenager, and he thought he could redirect me. We can handle this quietly. I almost admired the consistency. Roman, I said, using his first name for the first time in my life, you have 24 hours. For what? To tell the family. Fully. Honestly. Or I will. He snapped. You're being vindictive. No, I said calmly. I'm being transparent. He hung up on me. That night, Elias and I packed a bag and drove to Savannah. The Brooks house looked exactly the same. Brick exterior. Carefully maintained lawn. A place built on presentation. Inside, Arya Brooks was already crying. Weston stood near the kitchen, hands in his pockets. Roman and my mother had driven down too. 8 people in a dining room built for holidays. No turkey yet. No decorations. Just tension. Elias spoke first. I know, he said simply. No one asked what he meant. He placed the printed paternity results on the table. My mother sobbed. Arya covered her face. Roman looked like someone calculating damage. Weston didn't move. Then Elias did something I didn't expect. He looked at Weston and said, you're still my dad. Weston's eyes filled instantly. That moment shifted everything. Because revenge felt sharp and justified in my head. But watching Elias choose who his father is, despite biology, was something else. Roman tried to speak. We can get through this privately. I cut him off. No. Everyone turned toward me. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't shaking. I won't pretend this didn't happen. You all made decisions for us. You all protected yourselves. I looked at Arya. You let me marry your son knowing this was possible. She whispered, I was afraid. So was I said. Except I didn't know why. Then I said the thing I'd been rehearsing for weeks. I'm not sending the email. My father actually looked relieved. Instead, I continued, you are. His relief vanished. You will tell the extended family before Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow. Not vague. Not sanitized. The truth. Roman started to object. I slid my phone across the table. I have screenshots. Text messages. Admissions. If you downplay it, I'll correct it. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was structural. Weston spoke quietly. They should hear it from us. That's when I knew it was over for the old version of this family at least. The next day, before guests arrived, Roman Sinclair stood in that Savannah dining room and told his siblings, nieces, nephews, and elderly aunt exactly what happened. The affair. The uncertainty. The DNA results. He didn't look at me while he spoke. Some relatives cried. Some stared. One cousin walked outside and didn't come back in. It was messy. It was uncomfortable. It was honest. No one blamed me. That part surprised him the most. Thanksgiving dinner still happened. Quieter. Smaller conversations. No pretending. After dessert, Elias and I went for a walk along the river. We stopped under a streetlight and stood there for a long time. I don't know what we are now, he said. Neither do I. We talked about annulment. About separation. About staying married without biological children. None of the options felt clean. But something had changed. The secret wasn't mine to carry anymore. Back in Raleigh, a week later, the silence between us feels different. Not unstable. Just uncertain. We've decided to pause everything, no big decisions for 6 months. We're still in therapy. We're still married. But it's deliberate now. Roman Sinclair doesn't call as often. When he does, he sounds smaller. Arya sends careful messages. Weston checks in with Elias weekly. No one mentions keeping it quiet anymore. I didn't destroy them. I made them stand in the truth. And somehow that felt heavier than any dramatic explosion would have. So now here I am, married to my half-brother. Or maybe just married to the man I chose before biology had a vote. Some days that feel strong. Other days it feels like denial. If you were in my place, would you walk away to reset your life? Or would you stay and refuse to let your parents' betrayal decide your future?